And on to our first discussion this evening. The nation's waiting with bated breath as the countdown has begun for India's historic tryst with the moon. All eyes, ladies and gentlemen, are on August 23rd's soft landing attempt, which, if successful, will help India conquer the moon's south pole. Prayers are on the lips of all Indians for the successful touchdown on the surface of the moon, which is expected at around 6:04 p.m. on Wednesday. The live telecast of the landing event will begin at 5:20 p.m. on Wednesday, and Times Now will bring you every detail that matters. Let's talk about where we are at the moment in our quest to reach the moon's south pole. After the second and final deboosting operation on August 20th, ISRO has informed that a two-way communication between the Chandrayaan-2 orbiter and Chandrayaan-3 lander module has been established. And ISRO has released images of the moon's far side, which have been captured by the lander module. In fact, we will bring you those pictures on the big screen as well. In fact, these are images which are crucial as the lander's camera assists in locating landing safe areas without boulders or big trenches. Let's in fact quickly pull up those images on the big screen. If our team can just very quickly do that, and in fact we can see those big pictures that have been brought in by the lander. In fact, this is of course the images that have been captured. Why of course this is significant? Just look at that. That's Hain that is identified there. That is of course another spot that has been identified as well. This is of course as far as the Mare Humbolodanium area that has been brought in, as well as the Belkovich area that has been captured in this particular image. So these are four images that have been captured by the lander. Very significant because this will help in identifying areas which are relatively flatter, which don't have boulders, which could potentially, be disruptors in terms of the actual landing of Vikram. Remember, last time round there was an issue in terms of actually not just the communication or software issues, but also the big challenge that scientists have mentioned is to ensure that it goes from horizontal position to the vertical position. So that's going to be very significant as well. Let's now listen to experts who explain what is in fact the significance of Chandrayaan-3 lander module establishing communication lines with Chandrayaan-2's orbiter.
The first Chandrayaan mission showed that there is water on the moon and conclusively established that there is water on the moon. Since then, Chandrayaan-2 was supposed to put a lander in the southern pole where there is a lot of water. For some reason, things didn't work out properly. But the modular mission, the one that was going around the moon itself, has been remarkably successful and have worked extremely well. To the extent that Chandrayaan-3 does not even have an orbiter. It is going to use Chandrayaan-2 orbiter to communicate with the Earth.
And Director of the Space Application Center of ISRO, Ahmedabad, Nilesh Desai, says that on August 23rd, 2 hours before Chandrayaan-3 lands on the moon, we'll decide on whether or not it will be appropriate to land at that time based on the health of the lander module and the conditions on the moon. In case if any factor appears to be not favorable, then we will land the module on moon on 27th of August. No problem should occur, and we will be able to land the module on the 23rd of August. That's the plan B as far as ISRO is concerned. Let's quickly listen in.
तो 30 किलोमीटर की एल्टीट्यूड या हाइट से लैंडर नीचे की ओर चंद्र की सतह पर जाने का प्रयास करेगा 23 अगस्त को, और उसके 2 घंटे पहले हम पूरे जो कमांड है वो यहाँ से जो हमारा बाइलालू अर्थ स्टेशन है वहाँ से अपलोड कर देंगे लैंडर मॉड्यूल के अंदर। और उसके बाद जो लैंडर मॉड्यूल की हेल्थ चेकिंग, टेलीमेट्री और चंद्र में जो स्थिति है उसको सबको ध्यान में रखते हुए लगभग 2 घंटे पहले हम ये निर्णय लेंगे कि उस दिन चंद्र पे उतराण करना ठीक रहेगा कि नहीं रहेगा। ऐसा आपत्तिजनक लगता है तो हम लैंडिंग को पोस्टपोन करके 27 अगस्त को करेंगे।
So that's the plan B as far as ISRO is concerned, not leaving anything to chance this time around after last time's problems with Chandrayaan-2's landing. Of course, remember Chandrayaan-2 mission and the orbiter itself was very successful. Of course, discovery of water, etc. that had taken place. Let's quickly bring you up to speed with what really is the trajectory of the entire Chandrayaan mission. This is the LMV-3 M4 vehicle. Let's quickly go across to the next part of it. It's got a height of 43.5 meters. Let's go across to the lift-off mass, which is 6 442 tons. The mass is 1749.86 kilograms, in fact, including the rover. The mission life is 1 lunar day, which is 14 Earth days. Very significant because of limited light, which will in fact be required. Now, as it takes off, this was in fact what had happened last month at the portion of the takeoff, at the time of the takeoff. And in fact, you see those strap-on boosters, which in fact have gone apart. Now, of course, we'll see the other portions of the propulsion system, which will, of course, detach from the main Chandrayaan. And that is the Chandrayaan craft that you see, which in fact goes into orbit. One of those thrusters, as you'll see, as part of the rocket, that will detach as well. Now, as it goes into the orbit, we see how Chandrayaan makes several rounds across the Earth's orbit. In each of those rounds, you see over there, the orbit is being raised, and with the orbit raising, finally it reaches the maximum orbit raising, which helps it to slingshot. That's the name of the method, slingshot across into the lunar orbit, and it slowly gets inserted through the various mechanisms that exist on board the Chandrayaan craft. Of course, soon it gets closer and closer to the lunar orbit. It will in fact detach between the lander and the actual aircraft, the actual craft itself. The lander, in fact, then will make its journey closer and closer to the lunar surface. The orbiter and lander have separated, and this is what we expect to see happen day after. Ladies and gentlemen, very significant. Will we be seeing a soft landing of the Vikram lander? It's a lander which has a 1 lunar day mission life. 14 Earth days, of course, is what we're talking about over here. The mass, as we mentioned earlier, is 1749.86 kilograms, including the Pragyan rover. The power is 738 watts in terms of winter solstice. Also, the payloads that are on board this particular lander are 3. So it's not just Pragyan, but other payloads as well. The dimension, as you can see in millimeter cube, is 2000 into 2000 into 1166. Go on further in terms of the communication through ISDN. The Chandrayaan 2 orbiter as well as rover, the landing site will be 69.367621 south and further east. So that's the spot close to the South Pole where this landing is supposed to take place. The Pragyan then rolls out of the Vikram. This is what is expected, and then it will conduct experiments for 14 Earth days, which is 1 lunar day. That's the time when they will get the light of the sun to power the solar panels, which will allow for the rover to actually function on ground. A lot of challenges, a lot of ifs and buts, but a lot of preparation and hard work, blood, sweat and tears that have literally gone in of ISRO scientists to ensure that this mission is successful. And that's where billions of Indians who are, of course, praying for the success of this particular mission, and certainly putting India in that category of just 4 countries that would have successfully touched down on the lunar surface. That's what makes this such a special project, and also the fact that we would be the only country to have successfully landed softly on the moon, if all goes well, day after tomorrow. The Luna 25 mission of Russia, not really so successful, having crash landed. Let's quickly take this across now to our guests who are joining us. With us is Dr. Ajay Lele, who's a consultant at the MP IDSA. Abhijit Chavda is astrophysicist joining us. Dr. Vinita Navalkar is astronomy expert who's with us, as well as Dr. W. Selwamurthy, former DRDO chief. Let me start with you first, Dr. Ajay Lele. Let me begin by asking you, in terms of what we are expecting day after, there's a lot of buzz, there's a lot of excitement in terms of what we can expect. What are the odds that you are placing on in terms of the plan B being executed? We just saw how Mr. Desai was explaining how 2 hours before there will be an assessment. Is this just standard protocol? Is this SOPs that are being spoken about, or is there any possibility or reason for them to reassess at this point of time according to information that's available? Dr. Lele.
No, I don't think so, because as the mission was making a progress, time and again ISRO chairman has already explained that they are taking all sorts of precautions, because last time they had only one opportunity to land and that opportunity had gone futile. So this time ISRO has taken more amount of precautions. In fact, a couple of days back, Chairman ISRO has also mentioned that even if sensors fail and 2 engines fail, still they will be able to do a soft landing. That means they have taken various precautions. If A goes wrong, what should be B? If B goes wrong, what should be C? So from that point of view, I will say that yes, it's good to have a plan B, but definitely they will work on a plan A. Because if you see plan B, it should not require, we should not reach to that level of a plan B. But now they are approaching close to the moon surface. They exactly understand what's happening on a landing site. Are there any sort of perturbations where they will be able to land clearly or not? because the Vikram lander itself has got 8 cameras. We have already started receiving the pictures from Vikram lander. Vikram lander has already established communication with Chandrayaan 2 also. So Chandrayaan 2 is continuously taking images. So there is a rough idea that...
And why is that significant? If I can just interrupt you for a moment there, explain to us. ISRO tweeted that there is a second channel of communication that ISTRAC will have with the Vikram lander, with that communication channel being established to Chandrayaan 2. What does that do in terms of redundancies and in terms of ensuring that there is unbroken communication with the Vikram lander? Dr. Lilly.
You see, if we have to just take the very recent example, Luna 25 failed because of problems in a communication. A correct command at correct point in time was not able to get established, and that's why the particular maneuver which they were supposed to happen had not happened, and the entire mission failed. As far as ISRO's communication systems are concerned, they have got 2 ways of communication. One is that they were pretty sure that our orbiter, which has been launched during Chandrayaan 2, is doing a perfect job. And already it has been proved that it is doing a perfect job since Vikram has been able to establish the communication. But just in case if the communication fails, they have got a direct line that Chandrayaan 3 can directly connect with their system on the Earth's surface also.
Right.
So
there's built-in redundancies. Let me take this across to Abhijit Chawda. Abhijit Chawda, can you explain to our viewers why this landing at the South Pole is such a big challenge? Of course, any space mission is hard. There's no space mission that can be said to be easy. But what is particularly challenging? Is it the fact that it's on the dark side? Is it the fact that it's an unexplored area? Is the terrain particularly challenging? What really are the challenges that ISRO is looking at, which would make it the first country to have a successful South Pole landing if the mission is successful? And we certainly hope it does succeed.
So the landing is not happening on the dark side of the South Pole of the moon. It's happening on the near side of the South Pole. And the Chinese, one of the Chinese missions actually landed on the dark side near the South Pole, in the South Pole region. So that's already been done. So the thing about the South Pole of the moon is that it's there are lots of places in the South Pole which are permanently in shadow. So the sunlight doesn't ever reach there. And these are the craters where you have, where we know that there is water. So the water is a precious resource on the moon, and it's something that you can use for rocket fuel. It's something you can use to sustain human habitation and human life on the moon in the future when there are moon colonies on the moon. So that's why the South Pole is very important. And also the lunar surface is abundant in all kinds of minerals and resources. The lunar regolith is known to be abundant in helium-3, which is a great future nuclear fuel for future nuclear fusion reactors, and lots of other minerals also and resources on the moon's surface and below the moon's surface. So that's why it's really important that we go down to the South Pole. Only the Chinese have reached there on the far side of the South Pole, and we're going to be the first to reach on the near side of the South Pole.
All right.
So it's challenging for sure. Space exploration is really hard, and lots of lunar soft landing missions have failed. The success rate is about 53% only. Historically, there have been nearly 40 or 50 missions. 53% success rate. So it's going to be really challenging, but I really hope that we nail it this time.
We all hope that it is, and of course, given that it's second time, we certainly hope ISRO's second time lucky. Please stay with us, Dr. Vinita Navalkar, as well as Dr. Selwamurthy. I'm just going to come across to you, but we have several of our viewers joining us, and we're asking you to join us. Wish Chandrayaan, of course, your success, all the success that it can possibly get. At the same time, you can pose your questions to our experts who are present over here on our panel. Vineet is our first viewer joining us from Hyderabad. Yes, Vineet. Vineet, can you hear me?
Yes, good evening, Madhav.
Good evening. Please go ahead.
Yeah, the huge testimony to the scientific community and a proud, moment for every Indian. It will be a huge feat and a proud moment for every Indian. My question is that, looking at what happened in Chandrayaan 2 and the lessons, what has been learned by ISRO. So what are the chances that, this will be a successful mission, although we are seeing very positive indications of that? And that's number one. And number two, I also, understand that, the life of the rover is about 1 lunar day, which is 14 Earth days. So, is there a scope that, that gets slightly extended beyond so that, the rover is able to do more than what it's supposed to?
Okay. Okay, yes, in fact, both of those are very pertinent questions. I'm going to come back to our panelists in just a moment. Thanks so much for joining us. Anand Pandey is joining us from Nagpur. Yes, Anand.
Yeah, Anand Deshpande, sir. Anand Deshpande from Nagpur.
Yes, Mr. Deshpande. Thank you so much for joining us. Please go ahead. Sorry to get your name wrong. Please go ahead.
I want to say one thing. That is, the Lunar is going to land softly, and there is going to be no problem about it. I'm so confident about ISRO. And the most remarkable thing about this mission is that everything is done by the lander and the mission, that is the rocket, and not someone controlling from here. It is deciding on its own. That is how it has been designed. That is most.
Well, there are some amount of controls over here, but certainly your faith in the scientists and in fact scientific prowess of our nation is something that is powering the Chandrayaan mission, the Chandrayaan 3 mission. We can certainly share that excitement that you have. Thank you so much for joining us. Captain Jaspal is with us from Rohtak. Yes, Captain.
Oh, good evening to you and to your elite panel. I'm an 80-year-old decorated soldier. I firmly believe that after, and eternally optimist, after you have done your job and you have left nothing to chance, you can start celebrating, you can be upbeat mood, because we have reached a stage where our scientists have covered all eventualities. And let us be cheerful, and we have to stay normal without tension. We have done the job.
Absolutely. The power of positive thinking there. Thanks so much, Captain, for joining us with your hopes and wishes there. Kalyan is our next viewer, joining us from Bengaluru. Yes, Kalyan. All right. Shanti Swaroop, can you hear me? I don't think we can connect with Kalyan there. Shanti Swaroop is with us from Vijayawada. Can you hear me, Shanti?
Namaste. I appreciate total country, and the knowledge should go to the only rural areas. The development of knowledge is approach to the rural areas. My request is total knowledge approaching to the only rural areas. Coming development.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. But of course, the wishes that you can hear over there, Dr. Vinita Navalkar, so many citizens have so much of faith. They're saying, stay positive, be positive. Now is the time to do that. But in terms of the questions that some of our viewers posed, would you like to respond to that in terms of how the mission life can potentially extend beyond the 14 days that has been spoken about and what this mission really means?
So ideally, mission life cannot be extended because the solar panels which are put up on the lander and the rover, so they need to be in sunlight. So if the date is chosen in such a way that 23rd is when the day on that part of the moon will start. So it can only work for 14 days because for next 14 days, the entire system is going to be on the dark side. So ideally, we cannot really extend the mission, and that is why the mission life is of 14 days. But maybe in future, we can have, some missions in such a way that it can actually can be extended even when it is on the darker side, maybe by some power saving.
But if there is a future sunrise, will that not activate the panels in that situation?
Yeah, but then exactly, that's what my point is, that maybe in the future missions it can be done, have many maybe a batteries or something that can actually reactivate the systems or something, but this particular mission is actually designed only for 14 days.
All right.
So I don't think so it can be extended.
All right. Let me also go across to Dr. W. Selwamurthy, who's a former DRDO Chief. Sir, with your background in DRDO, I must ask you this. You know, we've seen on celluloid, we've seen the news coming in of the US announcing a space command. We've seen how in 2007, China, famously shot down a space satellite. There's also another security aspect of this, as we increasingly look at the race, the way in which Russia wanted to send its project just before us, of course, unfortunately did not succeed. And certainly there are huge challenges. But the point is that there is also increasingly being seen as a strategic aspect of the space exploration and the manner in which it's being carried out. How can we expect this to all pan out, particularly when we heard, Mr. Chavda talking about lunar colonies and so forth happening in the future? There's a lot over here when we talk about the strategic prowess as well that is on display, isn't it?
See, space has a tremendous strategic value. And that is why many of the countries, what you do, the technologies which you develop in the space missions has a direct relevance, analogy to some of the military applications. First, when you look at all the technologies involved like propulsion, control, guidance, navigation, payload integration, payload separation. All these are there in the long-range missiles as well. So if you look at the space missions, there's a very close analogy between all the technologies involved, even in the missiles. The other one is there are many space-based sensors and the devices for surveillance, reconnaissance. You can use space in a very big way. And particularly during battlefield situations, you also need launch on demand the requirements. That means in a very short time, you should be able to launch a vehicle. So these launch on demand capability, again, it's a spin-off coming from space to the defense.
Right.
The anti-satellite missile, which Dr. Satish Reddy, the former chairman DRDO, did. So again, to show that we will be able to destroy a satellite or an asset in the space. So there is a lot of analogy between what you learned from space to DRDO and from DRDO to space.
Right.
So even though we had earlier kept an iron wall between this, but now it is no more there. After the Pokhran 2, they had put a very strong curtain, iron curtain, but then now that is no more there. We cooperate with each other.
Right.
Even in the Gaganyaan mission, even in these missions, DRDO is there in the reviews. Some of these systems, subsystems are also being supported by the DRDO.
Right.
So the space mission is very important, and colonizing there and space command.
Okay.
Because this space weaponization, India is against that. But still, the militarization. But we can use the space for security.
Absolutely.
You can put sensors.
Absolutely. There are a number.
Guidance,
Yeah, there are a number of
missiles.
aspects that can be done. I just want to come in here because many of our viewers are joining us. Our phone lines are buzzing in our newsroom even as we speak. Ashok is with us now from Nagpur. Yes, Ashok.
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. I didn't understand the concept of...
I would request you to turn on your TV volume and continue talking, sir.
Yeah. I didn't understand the concept of lunar day and night. Because
Okay.
the moon doesn't rotate on its axis.
Yes. At a much slower speed, albeit, but I'll ask one of our experts to certainly answer that question. Thank you so much for joining us. Kalyan is with us from Bengaluru. Yes, Kalyan.
Yeah, so it's a great feat for our nation, obviously. Two things I'd like to know from the panelists. One is when the lander, approaches, what is the likely chance that the further gravitational pull, plays a role in spite of the booster rocket system that we have to slow down the speed? That is one. Second is what would be the role of Chandrayaan 2 in guiding the lander to find the appropriate place, besides that AI component that is already built in into the lander system? Those are my two questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kalyan. We'll certainly answer those questions with our panelists here. Radhakrishnan is joining us from Gulmarg. Yes, Radhakrishnan.
Sir, good evening. Good evening. First of all, heartiest congratulations to all our scientists. It's a wonderful achievement. And just I want to know, my question to panel of experts is, we are watching that Lunar 25, it just crashed. Are we learning anything from this particular lesson? Any changes we are going to the safe soft landing of this Chandrayaan 3?
Very pertinent question. In fact, that's a very significant one. Let's quickly go across to our next viewer joining us, Prasann Sharma from Bengaluru. Yes, Prasann.
Yeah, I'm here.
Please go ahead, sir.
First of all, I congratulate our scientists who have done a wonderful job. And my question is, Chandrayaan 2 had an orbital in the space which could have a relay contact with the other systems in the world. Can I expect that Chandrayaan 3, even if it fails, it will be able to communicate with an orbiter in further missions? That is my question.
Well, absolutely. And in fact, I think that question was also kind of answered in the debate earlier when we referred to the channel of communication to Chandrayaan 2. But I'd like to thank all our viewers for joining us. Let's take these questions one by one to all our panelists. Dr. Lele, would you like to explain the Lunar Day concept and also perhaps answer that question on Chandrayaan 3's communication through the orbiter and not just the lander? Those two questions to you, sir.
As far as communication is concerned, as I have already said, that you got two options available. One is that Chandrayaan 2 is in communication with lander. The rover can only communicate with the lander. So the moment rover starts moving on the surface of the moon, it can communicate with lander. Subsequently, lander will give the message to Chandrayaan 2, and the final message will be relayed to the surface of the Earth. Suppose there is some problem with Chandrayaan 2 orbiter, then Chandrayaan 3 or the lander can directly communicate on the Earth system also.
Right.
The other option,
light. For 14 Earth days, you will get some form of sunlight, and for 14 Earth days, you will get complete darkness. Now, if you have a lander or a rover that is not equipped with a thermoisotope, with a radioisotope generator which produces heat, then during the lunar night, you're going to be completely frozen. The temperature is close to, I would say, minus 200 degrees Celsius. So that is tremendously cold, and the instruments will completely freeze. So after 14 days, when the sun rises again on the moon, it will be far too gone for it to be revived. It will be completely frozen. It will be unusable. So for instance, Luna 25 was equipped with a radioisotope generator based on plutonium-238, I believe, and unfortunately it's crashed. So if you have a heat source like that, then you can have the lander operate, the rover operate for days, weeks, months also, depending on how you have designed it. So that's the reason why this mission, the rover is going to only be able to operate for 14 Earth days, and after that the mission is over for the lander.
All right.
For the rover.
All right. Very significant.
So that's
in fact,
the deal with the lunar day and the lunar night.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for breaking that down. In fact, Dr. Selwamurthy, one of the viewers said that watching the Luna 25 mission, do you think there would be any learning lessons for our scientists as well? Do you think we would have incorporated anything from their program? Of course, we understand the technologies are very different, but is there anything from a general perspective that we would have perhaps learned from the lunar mission's lack of success as well, if I can put it that way?
See, a country which has a long-standing the knowledge, expertise, experience in space launch, like Soviet Union, now the Russia, this is rocket science. Rocket science is so complicated that there are ifs and buts, and there is many unknowns which could pop up anytime, anywhere in space missions. So that is why we call it as always when we say a simple mission, it's not a rocket science. So here also in the Luna 25, the communication, when they were doing the deboosting to put them in the pre-landing orbit, so they could not achieve. It could be a software problem or the communication problem. So this we really don't know. Once they do the analysis and then report to us the reasons for the failure, then we will be able to know the exact reasons. Right. But then the lesson is you always build redundancy. Like now in this, the communication. I want to explain a little communication because it takes about 2.5 seconds for a signal from ground station to reach the lander. And also, it actually goes through the ISDN, then it goes to the lander, the propulsion module, the lander. So the whole thing is about 2.5. Right. Similarly, when you receive a signal from the lander to the ground station, this will also be another 2.5. Right. So you really have, if anything corrections are to be done, it is just about 7 seconds. So that is the precision.
Well, that's the kind of challenge. That's the kind of challenge that ISRO scientists are facing. Let's quickly go across to a few callers who are with us. Gurudev is with us from Bengaluru. Yes, Gurudev.
I have a doubt. Thinking about the criminology of that, this Luna 25, which came from Russia, is it really deep down, or it is another way to make this Chandrayaan 3 mission?
Well, it's a very powerful rocket, far more significant, and that's why we are using the slingshot method. I can certainly answer that question with some amount of authority. Karthik is now our next viewer joining us from Mumbai. Yes, Karthik.
Yeah, first of all, I bow down to the Indian scientists. So my question is that I just have a question on the debris that is getting collected in the space. So is there any concern that we should have on the space debris
Absolutely.
So is there any world...
That's something that many have expressed concern about. Thanks so much for joining us. Let me quickly get in a question from Tushar from Delhi. Yes, Tushar. Tushar, can you hear me? All right, let me take this question across to Dr. Vinita. Dr. Vinita, two questions. One is, of course, of space debris. Another, of course, a question coming in on the lander approaching and the gravitational pull that could potentially impact on Vikram, the lander. Those two questions would you like to very quickly answer for our viewers?
Yeah, so first of all, debris, yes, to some extent, debris can become a problem, but maybe not on the moon, but around Earth, lower Earth orbit.
It's more challenging in terms of the challenge as far as the moon is concerned. The lunar challenge is there. India is going to be facing that challenge in less than 48 hours. In fact, about 44 hours from now is when we will know if India has been successful or not. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank all of you, Dr. Ajay Lele, Abhijit Chavda, Dr. Vinita Navalkar and Dr. W. Selwamurthy for joining us this evening. Certainly a billion prayers with the Chandrayaan 3 mission and wishing for its success. All of India, an entire world, in fact, waiting with bated breath to see whether the mission is successful or not. Thanks so much for joining us on the first discussion.